Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. We're very happy to be back with our special regional specific edition of our COVID update webinar. Before we begin, I will take a few minutes to go over the GoToWebinar platform if it is new to you. On the webinar panel, this is a blue or orange flower icon on your screen. You'll see a section called Handouts. This is where you can download today's presentation and follow along or save it for later. There's also a questions pane where you can enter your questions for our panelists today, and we try our best to answer as many questions either direct to you through the chat box function or live during our Q&A session. Following the webinar, please take a moment to complete a short survey to let us know your experience today, and you will receive a recording of today's session by email tomorrow afternoon. I will now introduce Laura Jones, our Executive Vice President and Chief Strategic Officer. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Alexa, and welcome everyone to our regular COVID webinars. We've been putting these on throughout the pandemic to try and keep you informed on all of the important things happening with the various programs, and also let you know a little bit about how we're advocating on your behalf. And so I know we have some new folks joining us for today's webinar, so welcome to those of you who are new. I'm joined today by my very capable colleagues from across Canada. So Corinne is with us as usual, and I'll be calling her up in a minute to introduce herself and walk through some content. And also we do, as Alexa said, have a regional focus. Several webinars ago, we asked whether that would be useful for you to do a little bit of a deeper dive on what's going on at the provincial level. And we got a resounding yes to that question. So we have put on a series of regional webinars this week as our focus. And so we're joined by Jean-Marc Usher, who manages our business resources in our Quebec office, and Jocelyn, who manages our business resources in Atlantic Canada, as well as Marley Kingston, who is a policy analyst with us for our Atlantic team. And so I will introduce them shortly, but before we do that, we'll go to the next slide, and I will just remind you of our commitment. And if you're new, I'll just let you know that if you want more information, our website is updated regularly, and so we are always working to post as quickly as we can any new breaking information from governments. Also, we use the frequently asked questions that we get through our helpline. So if business owners are asking a question a lot, we use those questions to update our website. And of course, the questions that you ask on these webinars are also feed that website. As well as our website, we have our very capable business resources counselors who man our helplines across Canada. And the number is there below on the slide, and you'll be meeting several of them today. Some new ones for those of you who join us regularly and often see Brendan on our calls and Rachel on our calls. We've got some additional folks joining us today. Okay, so if we move to the next slide, we always like to start these webinars with a few quotes to make you smile or give you some inspiration. And so these are the ones we pulled this week. I know we're in a really tough part of this pandemic. The whole pandemic has been difficult, but of course, like a race, the last miles feel the hardest, and we're certainly hearing that on our helplines and can relate to it. I don't know anyone who hasn't had some kind of fairly significant struggle through the pandemic, either work or personal or both. But the last one put a smile on my face too. People often say motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. So that's why we recommend it daily. So I think it's a good reminder that we do need daily injections at this point of motivation and figuring out how we're going to put enough gas in our tanks to get to the other side of the pandemic. Okay, if we go to the next slide, we're going to briefly talk about what's new, and then we're going to go straight into those provincial restrictions and programs for Quebec and Atlantic and get to as many of your questions as possible. If we go to the next slide, in terms of what's new, I just thought this was a new cartoon I found, and I thought it was kind of a little bit of COVID humor again. I think this is certainly how we're feeling, that everybody is that we're talking to has some level of anxiety. So we thought maybe that'll put a smile on your face. The next slide, also just in terms of a little bit of optimism, I thought I'd just throw up how many people have been vaccinated, because of course the newspapers and the radio are full of whatever today's bad news is, and that's their focus. I mean, that's their job. Bad news sells more newspapers than good news. We don't report on safe landings at airports typically, but the plane crash will make the headline. So there is lots of good news starting to emerge out there, including vaccines. And this was 2 days ago. I just checked yesterday's numbers, and we're closer to 17 million now. So it's 16.9 million vaccinations across Canada. Many parts of the country have 50% of their eligible population or more vaccinated. So that's clearly going to start to really help us, and hopefully sooner rather than later. So if we go to the next slide, this is where I asked Corinne to join us, and Corinne's going to walk us through a couple of federal pieces, and then we will get to our provincial regional content. Nice to see you this morning, Corinne, and I will leave you to it.
Great, thanks, Laura. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to those who have visited with us before, and welcome to those that are new to our webinar today. I'm going to just talk briefly around federal, because we really want to focus a lot on the regional, but there were a few things we thought were important to still bring up, because it's been a couple of weeks since we last got together. So the federal budget that you remember happened about a month and a half ago or so. There's a bill now that's been introduced in the House called Bill C-30, which implements some of the provisions from the budget bill. There's usually 2 of these bills in a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. So this is usually one with the more important stuff in it. And so it does include some of the important things that were in the budget. Just a reminder, some of the big things in the budget, there were lots of things in the budget, but some of the big things in the budget were the fact that the rent subsidy and the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy are going to be extended now from June until September. However, there is a bit of a change is going to start happening sort of in early July in terms of the amount of the subsidy is going to start going down gradually until September, but that is part of this bill right now. There is an introduction of a new hiring incentive, which also starts in June. So that's in the bill as well. And there is something known as immediate expensing, where you can actually expense up to $1.5 million in the capital investments that you make between now and I think it's 2023 or 2024, so that you don't have to go through a depreciation process. You can just expense it in the year of purchase up to $1.5 million a year. And that's also in this particular budget bill as well. Just so you know, we're still waiting for some program details, for example, around the hiring incentive, though we have a pretty good sense of how it's going to work. But some details are not necessarily going to be available until the bill is really passed and then you start really rifling into the programs. But it doesn't mean that if the bill doesn't say passed until, say, June, the extensions have to go into effect, they will still go into effect. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the bill is going to hold up the extension from happening. And we do know quite a bit about what those extensions looks like. And I will say that in the end of this presentation, there is a bit of an overview of what those extensions look like, how it's going to work. So if you need a reminder of that, or if you want some more information, we have in the appendix of this particular presentation more details on those extensions. The other thing I wanted to, so that's basically about it. So those extensions will happen up till September 30th. We are hearing from many business owners already who are a little worried that the reduction starting sort of in early July of the wage subsidy may still be a little too soon, and that the hiring incentive may be happening a bit too soon. So if you have any feedback like that, please let us know. We are starting to hear it ourselves, and so we are looking at what we can do as an organization to sort of talk to government about the actual situation on the ground, and maybe sort of rejig a little bit some of those programs to help folks out.
And Corinne, I just wanted to mention for everybody that there's more detail on the federal budget and what's in it in the appendix. We did do a webinar on this a couple weeks ago, so we didn't want to repeat all of the same content, but it's there for you. We didn't take it out because I know there are some of you who are interested in, well, what are those new formulas for SUs and CERS? It's all there in the appendix, and I should have mentioned earlier that there's a handout that you can download just on the side. So if you want to keep the content, it's there for you. I think Alexa mentioned it, but I just want to mention it.
Great, thanks, Laura. Also, I wanted to make, we're still getting lots of calls about the Canada Emergency Business Account expansion. That's an expansion loan. The original, of course, was at $40,000. They then expanded to an extra $20,000. And I know that there's a number of you that are waiting to get that $20,000 because there was maybe a bit of a mistake done in the original application or something happened and you're now waiting to get that corrected. And you've been waiting since basically January for that to happen. I want you to know you're not alone. Many people are still waiting. They are gradually making changes to some of them, but there are some sort of a large chunk that they still haven't moved forward with. They are going to. That is what we're being told on an ongoing basis whenever we raise again, like, why is this taking so long? But in the meantime, and last we heard that maybe something will move very soon. But in the meantime, what can you do? It's, well, make sure you're staying in touch with your financial institution and let them know that you're still waiting and that you want to know what's going to happen as quickly as possible, because it will be the financial institution that is supposed to reach out to you once that is ready to be, they can start the corrections of your particular application. We also are happy to, the more information we get, the more stories we have, we can then really help us push government and put pressure on them to make sure that they've resolved this issue as soon as possible. So feel free to share your story at cba@cfib.ca. Move to the next slide. The other thing I just wanted to touch base on a little bit is the Highly Affected Sector Credit Availability Program. It is open, it's accepting applications. There are a few things like hiccups that have come up over the last several weeks that we have been able to get corrected with Business Development Bank of Canada, who is the sort of overseer of this. It is something you have to go to your bank, though, to apply for first, but there's been some miscommunications between the bank and the business owners, and BDC has been very helpful in correcting that with the financial institutions. I also will say this is going to be available till the end of June. We are hearing rumors that it may get extended as well, so just not sure yet, but that is something that we are hearing some rumors about. But quickly on this loan, there are a few things. This loan is at 4%. It's a 10-year term loan. There is no personal guarantee required. It's based on the viability of your business prior to the pandemic, so it makes it a lot easier to access. And on the personal guarantee, the banks may ask you for personal information, but they cannot ask you to provide a personal guarantee. If they do, please let us know. We can get that fixed for you. They're not allowed to do that. Secondly, some banks have been saying that the repayment terms are actually 5 years. Actual repayment terms are 10 years. That's what's mandated. However, if you want to negotiate with the bank and go shorter, that is something between you and the bank, but it's supposed to be a 10-year loan. Thirdly, there are 3 different segments. We're hearing of business owners who go in asking for a certain amount of money. Maybe it's on over $250,000, say $300,000 loan. They're being turned down because they look a lot more closely at your books and your viability as a business. And then they say basically you're not eligible, but that doesn't mean you may be eligible for a lesser amount. So it could be at $100,000 or $200,000, which are different segments of this particular loan program. And as the loan amounts go down, the requirement of what you need to sort of prove that you're capable of getting the loan or are able to get the loan actually goes down as well. So if you are first turned down because it's a too high an amount, then you may want to see if there's options for you to go to a lower amount loan that may be helpful. And finally, the information that the FIs can ask you for, the financial institutions can ask you for, is really just depends, as I said, on the segment that you're in, and that's where they look at the amount of viability of the business. The only other thing they can really ask for is anything you previously used for your CEWS, wage subsidy, or rent subsidy application. So other than that, it's really should be a fairly clear and straightforward process for you. If you do have questions, though, please call us. We have very good relationship with the BDC, who has been super helpful at trying to deal with this issue and help our members out. That's it on the federal side. As Laura said, a lot more information in the appendix on this if you want to look at that. And now we're going to turn it over to our regional colleagues so that you have that information as well. Is there something else, Laura, you wanted to touch on?
I think there's one more slide, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yes, you're right. There is one more slide.
And this is just a reminder to everyone that in terms of our advocacy action, We have petitions. We do have a petition that we'll put up at the end, Corinne, that covers all of the pandemic federal stuff that you're working on, but we do have a specific one now on rent relief. And I just wanted to kind of share with you what happens with those petitions after you sign it, because many people from the webinars have said, yes, I've been shut out of rent relief. Here's my story. You've signed the petition. So you've clicked on those buttons, you've signed the petition, you've given us your little story, which is great. And what do we do with these? Well, we use them in media, but we also are writing letters to every MP. So there's, it's too small to read there, but it's just to give you the idea that we're writing a letter and we pull some of the comments anonymously. We're not giving your name, but pull some of the comments to help them understand. So for members in their riding, this is what's going on in your riding. Please help us advocate for this. We've written several letters to the finance minister herself, and we'll do more of that as well. And then we're on social media with, you know, here are some of the stories of people who are locked out of rent relief. So just to give you a flavor of what that looks like, because I know many people on this webinar are giving us feedback through our surveys, and this is one example of what we do with your feedback and your content. And with that, we will now, and if you haven't signed and you want to, please do. It's on our there's the website URL there. And with that, I'll ask Jean-Marc to join us, and he's going to walk us. We'll turn our attention to some of what's going on in Quebec, and then once we've done Quebec, we'll get back to Atlantic Canada, and we'll start answering your questions. Thanks, Jean-Marc. Over to you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Corinne. So we're going to cover what's going on in Quebec. So essentially, and on the business resource side, what are the type of calls or questions that we're getting from business owners and from our members? And the top three are really the public health restrictions, the financial assistance program, the Quebec one, not the federal one, and obviously some of the HR's issues that pop in all the time. So the first thing that I wanted to cover here is this tool. Now, when it comes to the business restrictions, as you know, Quebec is divided right now in 4 different colors: yellow, orange, red, and dark red. Now, in order to find out what are the restrictions for your business, for your sector in your area, this tool is really good because you'll be able to just plug in your municipality and get the information right away as to what you can and cannot do. A big reminder here, if you're in an orange zone, and you have maybe clients or essential workers traveling from a red zone, a reminder is that the restrictions are applicable to them in their red zone are still applicable to them when they are traveling to an orange zone. So that's something to keep in mind when you have clients or essential travelers traveling between a red zone and orange zone. It is completely not permitted to travel to a yellow zone if you're coming from a orange zone or a red zone or a dark red zone. If we can move on to the next slide. Very good. So some of the main points here. So the travel restrictions, as I said earlier, it's only for, when you're moving from a red zone to an orange zone, it's for essential travel only. It's not recommended to travel between those zones. In a yellow zone is completely, it's not acceptable to travel to a yellow zone. In yellow zones, restaurants have a lot more, flexibility. They're able to have dine in person, obviously with some limitations. And retail capacity in most areas are now open, but just make sure that you are respecting the capacity per square footage. So there is a formula to that, and my team and I can help you figure out what that number is. Now, for other services, personal services, by appointment only, but I'm not going to read everything. You're going to see that slide in the information that we'll share. If we can move on to the next slide, I will cover the financial programs in the region. So a lot of you have used the federal programs. You've used CEBA, you use the wage subsidy or the rent subsidy program, but you still need some additional cash flow, or maybe you're not eligible to any of the federal program. That's where the provincial programs come in. So if you do business in Quebec and you've been doing business in Quebec for at least 6 months, the emergency assistance program for small business owners is a program that you can use, and you can borrow up to $50,000. And it's a 3% interest rate. This program is locally known as the POP-ME, and it's also administered by Investment Quebec, who will connect you with their local representative in your region. Now, there's no deadline right now, but if you need the money, I would encourage you to apply as soon as possible. But the government has extended the program for an additional year. If we can move on to the next slide. Very good. So understand something. If you are in a red zone or a dark red zone, you are in a maximum alert area. And if you are also targeted by a closure order by the province, you can benefit from an additional assistance to the POP-ME, to the assistance program, the $50,000 that you just borrowed. Now, how does that work? Well, the assistance is a forgivable amount that is allocated to the amount that you borrowed from the government, and you can get a forgiveness of up to 80% of that amount that you borrowed from the government. So, but that amount will be paid out to you per month based on your fixed cost, meaning your hydro, your rent, your insurance, etc. Now, there's been some new features that have been added to that program. If we can move on to the next slide. Now, if you are in those regions, high alert region, you'll see that you haven't gotten a break. You've been in the red. If you've been in Montreal, you've been in the red. You felt like you've been in the red since December. You get a break from that. So in addition to the amount that you borrowed initially, the government is going to allocate you some additional cash to face your expenses. So for businesses that have been closed for 90 days or less, they'll be able to get an additional $15,000 per physical establishment. For businesses that have been closed for more than 90 days, they'll be able to receive $30,000 or more per physical location. And for businesses that have been closed for 180 days, they'll be able to receive a maximum amount of $45,000 per physical location. So that's an additional amount that you're receiving, because the government recognized that a lot of businesses that have been in the red zone have not seen the end of the tunnel yet and have still been closed. Now, if we can move on to the next slide, an industry that has suffered a lot during this crisis has really been the tourism industry. So for hotels, motels, travel agents, and travel agencies, the government has added an additional portion to this program specific to those sectors. So anybody that would have borrowed the initial amount of the PAU PME program will be able to get 40% loan forgiveness on principal and interest 24 months after the government is calling out the repayment of those loans, within the 24 months of the repayment. So that's a good news, because a lot of you have not even started, working yet since March 2020. A lot of travel agencies that get in touch with us that are specialized in international travel have literally been completely out for the last 15 months. So it's comprehensive that these programs come in to assist you. And for hotels that have capacity of four or more rooms, you'll also be able to tap into that forgiveness portion of the loan. So these are all complex programs. The team of business counselors that we have here in Quebec, but also in the rest of Canada, will be happy to assist you with those programs. So feel free to give us a call. We'll try to direct you. If you've experienced the first wave of the provincial programs, they are very difficult to tap in. Whether the accessibility, the red tape on this is kind of intense, and I recognize it. But if you need help, we're here to assist you, and we'll try to break down the complexities. And we also have a contact at the Ministry of Finance to assist with escalations or questions when it comes to public health as well. So that's just covering the portion when it comes to financial aid. If we can move on to the next slide. Very good. So some good news. I know we're talking about closures, but some good news. As of tomorrow, all adults in Quebec will be able to receive their first shot, or at least book the appointment. Though we see some light at the end of the tunnel with these news. You'll be able to click on that actual picture is in hyperlink, so you're able to click on the hyperlink in order to get more information on the vaccination campaign, and also where to go, how your employees could book their appointments and so on. Very good. So if we move to the next slide, I wanted to cover another important topic that comes up, and that's sort of dear to us because we are kind of specialized in HR and business resources. It's the questions when it comes to managing your employees, right? You're dealing with job protected leave, school closures, quarantine, sick leaves, a lot of different moving pieces. And also the work refusal and your employees being anxious about coming back to work, etc., etc. We will be able to assist you with these questions. One thing to remember is when it comes to the school closure or the mandatory quarantine, they're enforced by the Emergency Act. So therefore, the 14 days are job protected and do not count against the 26 weeks that the employee is eligible for under the labor standards. So keep that in mind. And so as long as the employee is mandated to stay home for quarantine, they are protected. So you can't terminate them. But one thing you can do to accommodate them is if you're able to accommodate some employees with remote work, and we've seen some business owners not being too fond of remote work, you will be able to keep them engaged in your business. It's one way to keep them engaged, even if it's something that it's outside their normal duty, and you find some work for them to do remotely. Keep them engaged, because the longer they stay separate from your business, the harder it is for retention. And we know that in Quebec, there's a big labor shortage issue. So you want to keep your employees engaged. Callback strategy, if you're having some issues there, where our team is able to assist you. We have some templates for callbacks. We also have best practices that we can assist you with when it comes to strategies in order to protect your company, but also help get the employee back at work. We also built a back to business toolkit, which you could access here by clicking on the hyperlink. That sort of covers all the health and safety measures and best practices that you need to have in your business given the pandemic. And if you need some additional assistance, that's really a great tool. The Ministry of Labor is able to assess your workplace literally as far as health and safety readiness. So if you have some employees who are anxious of coming back to work, they can work with you in order to make sure that you check all the boxes. They're not going to punish you. It's not an audit. It's really to help you make essentially your workplace safe. So these are all the tools that we can help you with if you call in, and my team and I will be happy to assist you. So I think I covered most of the Quebec content, and if we can move on to the next slide, I want to encourage you. We, our small business advocates are doing a lot of work, and I've been doing a lot of work the last 15 months to improve, the environment for you to do business in during the pandemic. Please sign the petition. If you are not eligible to a certain program, if you feel like government bureaucracy is too heavy, or the complexity of certain programs, sign the petition. Help us drive the numbers up. That way we can add pressure to the government in order to improve the business environment. So that's pretty much it for the Quebec portion. I'm going to introduce my colleague Marley Kinson, who's going to cover the content for our Atlantic region. Marley, you have the floor.
Hi, Jean-Marc. Thank you so much. So just to get started here with our restriction slide. So as you can all see, the restrictions across Atlantic are pretty much harmonized, with the exception of Nova Scotia, who has been in a lockdown situation since April 28th. So just to touch on those briefly, with Nova Scotia, you see like the major closures and restrictions. The biggest one being the retail store closure, aside from essential retail services. So if you're curious as where you fall in that, we did include a hyperlink there to the essential services page where it defines that. Another major restriction that we see overarching the Atlantic area is around the travel restrictions. And I know that in BR, that's a common concern that they get. And there is some news on that came out this morning with Premier King in PEI suggesting that we could see the Atlantic bubble reopen in June. So just to move on to the next slide without getting too heavy into the restrictions. So we're going to start with New Brunswick. So unfortunately, New Brunswick's grant program did close at the end of April. So for this program, we continue to be in touch with Opportunities New Brunswick, who's the department who's delivering it, just to get that program back up and running if potential lockdown scenarios reoccur. So this program also was included in the most recent provincial budget, so the funding is still there. It's just about whether or not the government is ready to deploy that. So the next slide, please. So the first grant program we're going to talk about for Nova Scotia is the Small Business Impact Grant. So this is the third phase of this program. It was previously offered during the other two lockdown scenarios. So essentially, this grant can give you up to $5,000 or 15% of your sales revenue. And some changes here that weren't included in the other ones is this one is open to new businesses as well. And it's also open to independent retailers. So previously, where the other iterations of the program, it was focused on certain sectors. So the sectors have broadened a bit. But again, they do define impacted sectors. So you see things like gyms, hair salons, and restaurants. And this program isn't currently available yet, but the applications are going to be online by next week. So I believe it's Wednesday, May 19th. And some member comments like we have received on this program is while it's generally easy to apply for, especially if you've already received the two previous grants, it is really narrow. So if you're not included in that impacted sector story, you're kind of left out. So that's the thing that we continue to advocate for is these general grant programs based on revenue reduction rather than these specific sectors. Next slide, please. Some other programs just to draw your attention to if you're in Nova Scotia that you should check out would be the Small Business Real Property Tax Rebate Program. So this program provides a rebate of $1,000 or 50% of your property taxes for the last half of the 2020-2021 tax year. So the eligibility for this, again, you see that 30% revenue reduction. It's very similar to the impact grants eligibility wise. This is also now open to new businesses as well. So those who had opened on or after January 1st are included in this. And applications for this are supposed to open this week. We were told, yeah, May 10th. So hopefully, if they're not out right now, they will be by tomorrow. The second rebate program for property tax is tourism focused. So this one is specifically for tourism accommodations, and they have specific eligibility requirements around how many rooms, and you have to be registered through their tourist accommodation registration program. So just some things to consider there. And again, you are dependent on that 30% revenue loss. Some positives there is that it is also now open for new businesses as too. If you can demonstrate loss of occupancy in the period you have been open. And another positive with this is the first part of the program was actually only a 25% rebate. So it's been expanded to a 50% rebate. And this one is now open. So you can apply right now. Next slide, please. So this slide is for Prince Edward Island, and the main program that we're going to feature is the Tourism Activation Grant. So this grant can provide you with anywhere from $2,500 all the way up to $50,000 to cover expenses for the 2021 tourism season, as long as the expenses were incurred prior to July 1st. So this is a really big grant program that was part of the provincial budget. So we see with this program too, it has a really broad definition of who is considered a tourism operator and what is considered an eligible expense. So just because maybe you don't think that you would fit into a tourism related program, when you look at the actual who they have listed as eligible operators, you know, it's not just limited to hotels and bed and breakfasts or like tour guides. You know, it can include retail, gift stores, retail that's mostly tourism focused, local artists, artisans, even restaurants. So I would definitely suggest checking that out. I know we had previously, the last webinar, there was a small brewery that was really interested in it. So that again is another, you know, industry that you wouldn't think of that is included in this program. And this program is open now as well. Next slide, please. So just a few other programs that PEI is offering that your business might be interested in. The first one is the Web Presence Assistance Program, which is something that we've received a lot of positive feedback on, and it's available to any business. So this one basically provides, you can get up to $2,500. Its cost to go towards creating a website or upgrading your existing website. So if you don't have a website and it's something you've been thinking about, this might be a good push in that direction for you, and definitely a service you should utilize. The other program, just to draw to your attention, is the COVID-19 Special Leave Fund. So this program reimburses self-employed persons who don't have paid sick leave, and it's to cover your loss of earnings for 50% of your weekly earnings, up to $160 a day. So if you're self-employed, you can use this program. Your employees also might be able to access this program if they don't have paid sick days. So the intention of this program was really to cover anyone who was maybe self-isolating while waiting for test results. And this program is going to remain ongoing until after the public health emergency has ended. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. So last but not least, we have Newfoundland and Labrador. Unfortunately, their small business assistance program and tourism hospitality support programs are no longer receiving applications. They closed back in March following the outbreak there. Again, this is a situation that we continue to monitor and advocate for. So when lockdowns, if they happen again, that the government is ready to redeploy these programs. And I know some comments that we had gotten were that, you know, the applications were really complex compared to the funding that was available. So that's, again, something that we bring up in these conversations is when these are redeployed, that they're more general, that they're more accessible. And that really goes for all the grant programs in general, like in Atlantic right now. So that is, again, Jocelyn can speak to this with BR, but a big concern we get is that, you know, the federal programs might not be accessible because maybe you're a new business, and just the lack of provincial funding in general on the Atlantic side. But again, like, we are really pushing to get these grants to be more general and not so industry specific, and to look at, you know, the loss of revenue again rather than a specific industry, just so we don't have people who are still open but not taking in normal revenue falling through the cracks here. So the next slide, we're just going to cover very briefly the vaccine registration in each of the Atlantic provinces. So as you can see, these are hyperlinked. So they actually link you to the vaccine registry, so you can apply online for your vaccine. So in New Brunswick, just a few to draw attention to that would be of interest to you or your employees. So we have cross-border workers who can now receive at either a pharmacy or a clinic location. We also have staff of communal settings who can go and get theirs administered through a clinic. Nova Scotia's website, it's 40+ general, and it's clinics or drive-throughs. Next slide, please. And then Prince Edward Island, just want to draw to your attention would be any frontline workers 16+ who interact with the public and cannot work virtually. They can currently go and receive their vaccine, as well as private healthcare workers. And then in Newfoundland, another one to touch on would be the frontline essential workers, again, who have direct contact with the public and can't work virtually, so similar to Prince Edward Island. And now I think we have our petition page. So again, as I had mentioned, just with the common concern being that programs aren't accessible or the provincial programs aren't enough, there's not enough funding. When you sign these petitions, like, it helps us push to make these programs more accessible and to push for those stronger provincial programs. Oh, sorry, Jocelyn, I think you're on mute.
I am on mute. I just wanted to say, hi, I'm Jocelyn from Business Resources. Marley covered a lot of the provincial programs. From an Atlantic Business Resources perspective, we are hearing from a lot of small businesses about issues that they're having with their staff and human resources things. So this is a great opportunity to remind you to call Business Resources if you have concerns about job protected leaves, employees that might need to cross borders and whether or not they can or cannot. We're also we're having some calls about layoffs and terminations, but we're also having a lot of calls about finding new workers and shortage of finding workers and hiring workers. And business resources have so many tools to help with that, along with an amazing member portal on our website with I think there's 25 bilingual templates, but business resources has almost unlimited templates for our members. So you're always welcome to call and ask us questions that you might have about your employees.
Jocelyn, it's such a good reminder. And can you give people a sense of what those templates are? I know you've got some for if you're hiring for the first time or those kinds of things, but can you just give people a little bit of a sense of what some of those templates can help them with?
Well, I mean, I think if you own a business, you're aware of all of the different elements of compliance that you have to have, which would be health and safety, but also things like violence and harassment prevention in the workplace. We have policies and templates for that, attendance policies, vacation schedulers. There are so many different things that we have. We even have things like an environmental sensitivity policy. What's that? Well, you know what? Sometimes having heavy scents in the workplace can be problematic. We have things like a snow day policy, which, hopefully we're done with the snow, but those are the kinds of things that we have. There's almost anything you can think of. If we don't have it, we'll put it on the list and we'll create a policy around it.
Yeah, so it's very helpful. You don't have to start from scratch with some of these things. I know, for example, when privacy policies were required, we started to do a lot of that, which is great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I don't think we have many questions. I think we've got a smaller group than normal because we're doing a regional focus across Canada, and so I think we had one on EI for that Jocelyn may have answered privately, and one on essential goods in Nova Scotia and what's counted as essential goods. So I'm going to call everybody up again and just ask everybody what I typically do at the end of the webinar is just to, everybody gets to say a few words. And so I'll ask my colleagues to put their videos on, and then if they have anything else they want to say, or if there are any questions that came to you privately through the function, you can cover those, and then we'll call it a webinar. And Jean-Marc, maybe or Corinne, maybe I'll start with you, and then I'll go to our regional colleagues today. Actually, why don't we do that?
Sure. So I was in the process of answering one question, so maybe I'll just do that here. Krista was saying that she just bought a business that has been in operation for 20 years and is wondering if it was, because it was a share sale, if they're able to qualify for the wage subsidy program. So I'm going to answer, but Jean-Marc and Jocelyn, I would welcome your input if I'm incorrect. It's my understanding that in order to qualify for the wage subsidy program, you have to have a CRA business number that was established prior to March 1st, 2020. So if you still have the same CRA business number, then you should be okay. But if you had to get a new CRA business number when you took over the business, then you may not be eligible. But maybe Jean-Marc or Jocelyn, if you have any other feedback or thoughts on that one.
Well, I think you answered it correctly. If you have either a CRA business number or a payroll number as well, that can also work. So if you bought the business with those information, you should be fine.
Yeah, as long as those were established prior to March 1st, 2020, and you're using those same numbers, you should be okay for applying.
Very good. Yep.
Great.
Okay. So that was the question, but beyond that, thank you again. Thank you for joining us today. I'm hopeful that we were able to provide some good information. My colleagues are a wealth of information on the regional level. And also, if you have any input, we encourage you to obviously give our colleagues a call in business resources, but also encouraging you to fill out those petitions. So if anything resonates with you, I think it's really important you fill those out because it really gives us an indication of what we need to be lobbying on, both federally and at the regional level. So it's something we encourage you to do. And finally, as I always like to do, is surveys. So we do a lot of surveys, and we want to encourage anybody who gets a survey to make sure you fill those surveys out because they're hugely influential in the direction we take as an organization, and they become hugely influential with government right now. It's one of the only sources of information government has on what's really happening with small businesses. So your voice there actually, not only do we listen to it, but governments actually listen to it quite a bit as well, both federally and provincially. In fact, many of them ask for it on an ongoing basis. So we encourage you to provide that input because it's invaluable in our work. So thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Corinne. And I'm going to go to Jean-Marc and Jocelyn now. I do have a question that's come in, and so we can wind this up slowly. So if you do have questions that you're like, oh, I did want to ask a question, feel free to put them in. We're happy to. We want to answer all of your questions. So Sammy is asking if it's not. She wants to, or he are going back to the office. But some younger employees are refusing to vaccinate. Anything that can be done, and I know we're just on the verge, Jocelyn, you talked about those templates, and we're working through with the lawyer a vaccine policy that we're going to be making available to members that you can have. But what advice are you guys giving people who want people to return, but they've got some younger employees who don't want to vaccinate? I know this is a really tricky one, and probably one you're hearing a little bit more about, and we're going to get a lot more. And again, we'll have a policy soon that we put together with the help of a lawyer. But any comments on that? Jocelyn, do you want me to go to you first, or Jean-Marc?
Yeah, the question of whether or not you can make an employee vaccinate has been tossed around in the legal world, as you can imagine. We will have a vaccine policy available to members, and it went through quite a bit of iterations because it is a hot topic, and there's a lot of question as to whether or not you can. I think for the most part, if the biggest concern, of course, would be someone's human rights. And the human rights is going to be based on, is there a reason that that employee, one, needs to have a vaccine as their bona fide occupational requirement? And two, is there a reason why that employee might not want to get a vaccine because of their protected grounds under human rights, religion, race, their disability, any of those things? So because human rights gets involved sometimes in business resources, if we feel you need to speak to a lawyer in that situation, we will tell you when you need to speak to a lawyer. But in most cases, I think our members will be coming up with a policy that suggests it's a good idea to be vaccinated. But again, we have to look at those on a case-by-case basis. Jean-Marc, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think you touched on all the different important points. It is definitely a case-by-case basis. In Quebec, actually, it would be very hard for you to make it mandatory for your workplace because the provincial government itself hasn't made that decision. They are the one with they haven't established that precedent yet. So it's very hard for you to make it mandatory. However, if you do have if it's a bona fide requirement, because even with PPE or physical distancing, your employees are not going to be able to be protected. Maybe that's something that you can enforce with the help of a lawyer. So that's what to keep in mind. It's definitely complex. It's definitely on a case-by-case basis, workplace to workplace, not even industry to industry, because it's all based on the particularity of your activity. So give us a call, and we'll try to guide you through the process. And like Laura said and Justin said, we're working on a policy as well to assist you.
And I think if I remember, Jean-Marc and Jocelyn, one of the things that as the policy has evolved, you're quite right, Jocelyn, it went through a couple of iterations, because when the lawyers first came back with something, we said, this isn't going to work for our members. It was just too, just wasn't quite it. But I think there were two pieces of it. One was encouraging, that the policy is that we encourage you to get vaccinated. I think the second piece was, if you're not going to get vaccinated, we encourage you to tell us. Again, encourage, not mandate, so that we can continue to put other things in place to keep people safe. And those were the two pieces of that policy. Now, obviously, as you both said, if you're in an industry where you know, the health of your customers can be affected, then that may change things. And also you have to balance the human rights. So tricky question, Sammy, and we'll make sure to get you a copy of the policy, which I think is pretty close to being finalized now, because we recognize something members are going to need. Corinne, I've got one for you. I know I've already said goodbye to you, but I'm bringing you back. So I have one from you, for you, from Bob. Is there any further consideration to expanding qualifying expenses for CEBA to include small business owners who pay themselves with dividends? And I know there's all kinds of, we'll answer the CEBA question, but whether it's rent relief or CEBA or SUS, there's all kinds of businesses still falling through the cracks. So maybe I'll broaden the question out to, like, what are we continuing to lobby for that we don't have yet? And I know that's a long list, but over to you.
Yeah. So starting with the CEBA, the Canada Emergency Business Account Loans, there is the non-deferrable expense stream, which has proven to be complex, I guess is probably the best word. You know, the payroll stream has been fairly simple and straightforward. So anybody who had enough payroll, I think it was fairly easy to do. But if you didn't quite have that amount of payroll, you were under that $20,000, then the non-deferrable expense stream was the way to go. And what we've come to understand is it's become very limited in terms of the amount or the types of non-deferrable expenses that are being accepted. We're still getting many calls on that. It's still something we push government to be more flexible on. They haven't really bent really much on this, and that includes dividends being paid to business owners. So it's definitely an area that could use a bit of an overhaul or a bit more of a think. And we certainly continue to bring forward all the various examples we've been getting from our members on how these non-deferrable expenses are just way too narrow in terms of the many things that businesses have to pay for to run their business that just are not included. So we continue to advocate for that basically on the CEBA side. Now CEBA, of course, is continuing to be out there till the end of June. You know, we're continuing to advocate to expand CEBA even further so that there's more, or expand the forgivable portion as well. So alongside that, we want to make sure it's as accessible as possible to as many businesses as possible. But to your other question about, you know, beyond that, certainly on the rent subsidy, you've already talked about some of the gaps that we've seen on the rent subsidy that we continue to advocate for. On the CEBA, it's the non-deferrable expense piece of it that's probably the most problematic still. And then certainly for new businesses, that anybody who's created a business since March of 2020 has not been able to access any of these programs. So that's another big one that we're continuing to advocate for. So we've had business owners tell us that they started putting their business together back in late 2019, but they didn't open until after March, and therefore they're not eligible. So they've been going without anything for the past year. So there's still a number of these gaps in various programs that we're continuing to sort of raise and try to get government to address. And that's definitely one of them, is around the non-deferrable expense portion of CEBA program.
Thanks. And also the business owners that pay themselves in dividends.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, business owners that pay themselves in dividends.
Right? That's the non-deferrable.
It as a non-deferrable expense. Yeah, exactly. And also basically on the wage subsidy too, that's been an issue, that anybody who pays themselves in dividends, that's not included as part of the wage subsidy. And it's something we have raised often as well.
Yeah. Okay, so Jean-Marc, why don't I go to you to see if you have any final questions or thoughts you want to share and leave people with, and we'll continue going on the panelists. If you have questions, please put them in and I'll put them to the panelists, but I'm not seeing any more on my screen right now.
No, I don't see any questions on my screens either. As far as the last words, I mean, one thing that I don't think I touch on is we're getting a lot of calls as far as termination is concerned, because through the pandemic, a lot of businesses have restructured their operations. So in Quebec, don't forget that when it comes to an employee that has 2 years or more experience with your company, there are some consideration to take into account when you are terminating an employee. There is a disciplinary procedure to go through. So give us a call, you know, to help, so that we can help you guide you through that process, because it's not as easy as just sending a termination letter. it's a blind spot, and you don't want to necessarily receive a claim after 6 months after you've taken the decision. So that's something I kind of forgot to say during the presentation. Otherwise, we have a team. We actually received some reinforcements thanks to our operational committee at CFIB, and we have a team that is strong now, and we're able to have a very good service level. So feel free to give us a call. Keep us in your speed dial. Make us a habit. Call us if you have any questions. It's the golden rule. Call us. We'll try to help in any way possible. So that's pretty much it for me. Just going to pass, just give you back the microphone.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John Mark. As you can see, we've got a dedicated, I know many people on this webinar have probably met Rachel and Brendan, who are regulars on our federal webinars, but you can see we've got lots of great folks right across Canada who are in your corner and want to hear from you and happy to take your call. We like to say we're the opposite of the kind of experience you might expect when you call government. So that's our kind of our standard. And we're working to change the experience you get when you call government too, telling them they've got to do a better job. Jocelyn, I'm going to go to you and for your final comments, and if there's any last questions you want to answer before we wrap up.
I actually do have a couple of questions. One of them is from Susan, and she wanted to know if there's still a 1 week waiting period for EI. And the answer is that maybe. It actually says that there has been some temporary changes to EI, and the waiting period may be waived. And I don't know what may be. It kind of all encompasses, but I am assuming because of COVID, most of the time I think that would be waived. And she also asked about if that means during that time the worker can work 0 hours. And there's really 2 times that someone can get an ROE and start an EI claim, and it's when there's an interruption of earnings, which of course could be 7 consecutive days, or if their regular salary has gone below 60%. So if your worker's hours have been cut by 60% or 40% or more, then you can issue an ROE and they can open a claim. So it doesn't have to be 0, but it would have to be less than 60%. And Kelly also wanted to ask about masks. We would have to, if you could continue to wear masks if an employee refuses to vaccinate. As of right now, none of the provinces has removed the requirement to wear a mask. I suppose if you're in your 6 feet of space at your desk, you don't need to, or if you're eating in certain circumstances. But a mask can be, one of those solutions, as we talked about, for employees that are not able to vaccinate or who choose not to vaccinate. You can continue to require PPE because you do have a duty to keep your employees and your clients healthy and safe. And if wearing a mask in spaces where they can't be 6 feet apart is the solution, then you are allowed to make that your own internal policy. So I hope that answers. If not, please call us and you can ask for me on the line and we can go into that further.
Thanks, John. Go ahead, John Mark, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, on the EI comment, actually, Jocelyn made a good point. But if you want to speed up the process, you don't have to. Your employees does not have to wait for the ROE to be filed because of the emergency order. Now the employees can actually apply directly to EI. By the time that you send out the last paycheck and you file the ROE, their name is already in the system. So get them applying early. If you know that there's gonna be an interruption in earnings, get them applying early before you file the ROE. Actually, it's a good tip.
Oh, that is a good tip. Thanks, Jean-Marc. And on the mask piece, I just wanted to add that this is going to be such a fluid, this is the frontier of where public policy is going, right? And so we don't know what employment standards are going to look like, what the policies, what the government requirements are going to look like. And I think in the meantime, doing, as business owners always do, making those practical, pragmatic choices like what Jocelyn was recommending with the masks for people, as the policy evolves, just continue to make those choices to try and keep people safe in a pragmatic way. I think that's going to stand you in good stead, but we'll continue to update you as we know more information about what the actual requirements are. Right now, that space is kind of still being defined. Marley, I'm going to go to you. Do you have any questions you want to answer? And then any last comments or thoughts for our business owners?
Yeah, so I actually got two really good questions sent to me. So the first one I'm going to mention is from Mike, and he was asking about the Nova Scotia paid sick leave program, which just was announced, I think, like 20 hours ago. So that's good to bring it up because it was not included. But that program is very similar to the PEI program, so it's going to cover 4 paid sick days, and it's also available for the self-employed, so you can check more details. It's on the Nova Scotia/coronavirus website, and the applications for that open May 26th. And then the other good point that was brought up to me was from John, and he mentioned that, you know, just because your non-essential retail is closed, you are still able to do curbside pickup. So that's a really key element there that I forgot to mention.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, we're encouraging customers across Canada to support small business by using those kinds of options where they're not able to go in. Any final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up? Marley?
Yeah, I guess like I would definitely recommend, like, when you're in these like tough situations right now, to utilize like the service that like Jocelyn and John Mark and their teams provide. Like, BR is excellent, and that's like kind of the ground zero for any issues that come to the Ledge team. So, you know, if like BR can't find that like immediate solution, like it is something that we will continue to work on long term, just to help everyone get through this together.
Thanks so much. Well, I want to say a big thank you to all of the folks within our organization who helped pull this together, but also to all of our webinar participants. Hang in there, we're on your side. And I guess my parting thought would be just going back to the quote about inspiration being something like daily bathing, you know, something, it's not one and done, but, you know, keep doing it and keep finding those sources of energy, those people who are in your corner who can help, you know, keep the gas tank at least hopefully not going into empty. We are in tough times, and I think that that is really, really important. And we're probably closer than we imagined to getting through this and getting to much better times, but it still feels like a little ways to go. So keep tapping into that inspiration where you can, and you got to, and if you need to call, I know Jocelyn and Jean-Marc will nod their heads to this, but we often get business owners who just want to call us to talk, to say, to vent, or to say something that they can't say to their employees or their customers or their you know, suppliers, to just kind of have a moment. And our counselors are always happy to do that too. So don't hesitate to call us if that's helpful. And with that, we will call this a webinar. I wish everybody a happy, we're, I guess, now starting to head into the weekend. So I wish everyone a happy weekend, and we'll be back soon. We'll alert you to when our next webinars are, and we always like to get your feedback on whether what we're doing is useful, and any other ideas for webinars. So please do that as well with our survey. And I'll call it a webinar, Alexa, and with that we'll close out. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, guys.